Hello everyone, hope you're well. It's 3rd of November 2021. Recently I've been noticing on Facebook, I may have to start calling that Meta from now on. I don't know when the rebranding will formally take effect, but on Facebook Meta, um, I've seen these sort of promoted videos, let's call it. When something comes up in your timeline, whether it's recommended for you or whatever, but it's from a group called, I believe it's Auditing UK. Now, I think a lot of these are clickbait videos, but actually something happened to me in Sunderland City Centre a few weeks ago. I was taking pictures of some public artwork. I like to take pictures in urban areas. I just like taking pictures, and this was some interesting artwork. And this guy came up to me. I could smell a little bit of alcohol, so I was a little bit wary. Um, Youngish guy, I guess, a bit older than myself. But anyway, he asked what I was doing, and I said, "Well, just taking pictures, nice artwork here." And they said, he was talking very fast. He said, "You have a right to do that under," and he quoted, I don't know if it was legislation or what. The guy was a little bit drunk. But basically, he was saying that I have absolutely every right to do this, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You can film anywhere you want. And it was a bit interesting because initially I thought he was, I was a bit wary. I thought he was going to try and steal my camera or something, but he was actually kind of saying go ahead with it, which was a little bit interesting. I sort of laughed awkwardly and yeah, and then just got on with it, and he kind of went on his way. But he asked me about something, and I think in retrospect it might have been this group Auditing UK. Um, so anyway, I've checked out some of their videos, and there's a lot of them around. There are similar things in the States, but sticking to the UK, from what I gather, you get these people, mostly men. I haven't seen women do it, but I don't know, maybe there are some women involved. But what they tend to do is they go to places like police stations, or specifically up to police officers or security guards in a building, police officers in a city centre, a town centre. I've just watched one which is from Bebington in the Wirral. Um, Bebington. I used to pronounce that town Bebington, but I guess it's Bebington. Anyway, this guy decided to just go and sit on the grass outside the police station there. And it was the grass area directly outside their police station, so it was um, part of that complex, I guess, rather than just being a patch of grass that happened to be outside. You could tell the way it was designed; it was part of the complex. But anyway, it was typical of these sort of videos. This one was a little bit more tame than some of the others I've seen, but basically, he was just sitting there, and some officers came out and asked him basically who he was. I said, "Oh, I'm happy to give my first name as Matt." I'll put a link to the video. Um, and there was no escalation. There was nothing got out of hand or angry. But they said that it's not an issue for them, but they just it creates suspicion. Like they don't know who he is. He only gave his first name. Um, he said a lot of people do this actually. Well, talking about a lot of auditors, what they call themselves. And yeah, I'm pretty sure he really wanted a reaction for his video. He was hoping that the police would get aggressive or angry or something like that to kind of pitch to his fan base. And this is what I've seen from others. I think they really, really seek confrontation. Now, I think that there is a place for investigative journalism. I think that there are corrupt police officers. And I think that in a democracy, in a free society, there is definitely place to ask questions of power. Okay, I think it's very important to scrutinize power. I mean, we see recently from the Metropolitan Police the number of officers that are starting to emerge now who are, there was a guy arrested recently for rape. The fact they are starting to be arrested rather than just put on death duty is a good thing, but unfortunately, it probably took the Wayne Cousins case in order to do that. I think the Met probably is quite rotten. I think that particular force it is the biggest in the country, but I think it has a serious problem. and I think Chris said that Dick needs to really clean out her ranks. Um, so I am not someone who is a police stooge, so to speak. I'm not someone who says, "Oh, we can never question them because they have the uniform; they're always right." There are corrupt officers. I've personally dealt with corrupt officers. I've dealt with some very rude officers. Um, through being a victim of crime, which is disgraceful. You know, when someone is a victim of crime, they want sympathy, they want, at the very least, some support. So I've experienced that. I've also seen in recent weeks incompetent police, the way, for example, that police forces have handled the Insulate Britain protests is utterly pathetic. West Midlands police, there was footage of them kind of calmly talking to Insulate Britain protesters and saying, well, we'll try to do what we can for you, but we can't guarantee the public won't get angry. Now, this particular group in Birmingham city centre of Insulate Britain activists, they claimed that they were only sitting down during the red lights when it was green to let cars past. So I guess they're less militant than some of the other groups, but they're still Insulate Britain, which, as far as I'm concerned, should be a prescribed organisation. And this officer was just saying, "Oh, we'll get you what you want. But we can't guarantee the public won't get angry with you." And people look at this, and I think it just infuriates them because they think, "Well, wait a second. If I was to take the law into my own hands and, shift one of these people, I'd probably be arrested for assault." So I think the police do themselves no favors with this sort of hands-off approach because there is an inconsistency. During COVID, when people were minding their own business and you had police officers coming into people's gardens, that was a different matter. Um, and I think the police haven't done themselves any favors in terms of optics. But looking at this video of this guy sitting outside the police station in Bebington, I mean, my question is, what's your purpose exactly? What is your purpose exactly? Are you an investigative journalist? What is this in aid of? And the thing about these auditors, I find them quite arrogant because they sort of have this idea it's fine for them to ask questions. It's fine for them to just film people without their permission. But as soon as the questions turn on them, they get all defensive. So, they can give, but they can't take. And I think that says a lot about the approach that they're taking. I mean, if they were investigative journalists, there are certain ways to go about that, or there are certain things that investigative journalists have to do in extreme circumstances. For example, filming undercover. And I think there is definitely a place for that. For example, whistleblowing of corruption. But what I see from these auditing guys, they just seem to be like making an ass of themselves. And I'm sorry, but that's how it comes across. They seem to just be confrontational for confrontational sake. I've seen other videos where there's a guy somewhere in the south. I think it was somewhere in Essex. I can't remember, but anyway, it was some sort of security facility, and he was filming outside. And when the security personnel came out and asked him questions, he just got all defensive, and he wanted to put up a big fight about it. There was another case. I think it was in Peterborough town centre. Um, oh, Coventry. Excuse me, Coventry city centre. Two police officers asked this auditor why he was filming a security van. Now, this is one of those transit vans when banks are exchanging money. And, that's a lot of money. That could be thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds. So naturally, if someone is filming in the vicinity of that, people are going to be suspicious. Police are going to be suspicious. How do they know that that's not a potentially high-level criminal who's planning a heist and he's, getting the details? Um, it's not good enough to say, "Oh, but I'm not." That's ridiculous. What irritates me about these auditor guys is they don't put themselves in the shoes of the people that they're filming. They don't think, well, they've got a job to do, and they're only doing that job. And it seemed to me that they just seek a reaction. You know, being a police officer, security guard is not an easy job. And it seems these guys just want to make it harder by being stubborn for the sake of it. I mean, they're very quick to say, "Oh, give me your number, tell me what your ideas and all that sort of thing. But when police officers or security personnel ask them questions, they just say, no, I'm not answering that, or I can do what I like. In terms of filming on police grounds, apparently, technically, outside a police station is public property, so there's not specific laws against it. Filming police officers, there's no specific laws against it. But I would suggest there's also just reason, common sense. And frankly, most of the time, it seems to me, far from being tyrannical, bully boys, as auditors like to make out, the police are reasonable with them. They're calm. They don't, raise their voices. They simply ask questions like, "Why are you doing this?" It is a bit suspicious. Um, and the point I would make is just because you've got a right to do something doesn't mean you should do it. I mean, isn't there a reasonable case to be made that if you're being stubborn and just willfully not answering questions, then that could potentially escalate the situation for your choice? Um, I mean, we have had terrorist attacks in this country. We have had police officers killed. There was, of course, the case last year where the officer was killed inside a station in London. Now, I'm not saying that terrible incidents should be a reason to take away rights. Absolutely not. But I do think these auditors are more interested in their own ego than actually exposing anything. I mean, the way they pitch it is very much to appeal to the fanboys in their videos. Um, it's not the police who are being bully boys. If anything, it's the auditors because they're simply seeking to provoke. There's no purpose to that. There's nothing practical about it. That's not exposing power. That's not exposing corruption. So I just don't really see the point of it. In the grand scheme of things, I'm not suggesting it's the worst thing. I mean, I think that this country faces real threats. I think this country faces real problems. Maybe there is a case to be made that some irritating people who like to push the bounds are actually doing a public service. But I don't really see it that way. I don't think they necessarily are doing a public service. I think they're just being willfully stubborn for the sake of it. Um, they're not saying, officer, how do you explain the brutality that's been alleged at this station? That sort of thing. Um, just being rude and stubborn. So I don't really see the point of it. And personally, I think the police show enormous patience with these guys. Um, if I'm pointing a camera at a police station, it's it's a secure building. It's a building where criminals are apprehended, where people are questioned, where victims of crime are giving statements. That's sensitive. So you can't film a police station and just expect the police not to be suspicious. I think that's very, very unreasonable because they don't know who you are. They don't know that you're not a friend of an offender who's maybe planning some sort of reprisal against the station or something. Does that sound crazy? Well, consider the urban riots of the 1980s when you had police stations attacked. There was one police officer killed. So there is a legitimate security issue that the police have. Um, anyway, that's my take. Another thing that irritates me about them, they're a bit like they're a bit like hardline protesters, and conspiracy theorists. The whole world has to be according to them, and anyone who thinks differently, well, anyone questions them, oh, you're a puppet of the state, you're a police stooge. It doesn't matter that I say I have a big problem with corrupt officers and I think they should be arrested. No, if you question them, then you're a stooge. You are a puppet. They think they know better than everyone else. So finally, I would just say, maybe I'll regret saying this. It might be in the future if we become a police state. I'll say, well, these guys were right all along, and they should have been doing that, and this was all practical, and they were doing a public service. But I just don't see that at the moment. I think they have an anarchist streak to them. I think if they had their way, there would be no police. you know, because they think that being in a free society, being in a democracy, means that there are no rules, that there's no sense of personal responsibility. I can do what I like. It's a very entitled mindset, and it's quite a rude mindset as well in terms of how you communicate with people. So, for example, in this video in Bebington, the officer said, "Well, this is, can you just move from the grass?" And the guy's, "Nope, I'm staying here." I mean, why? Why be stubborn? There is absolutely no reason why you have to stay there, is there? There's no purpose. So I don't really have much respect for them, um, because I think they're just trying to get the 15 minutes of fame, or maybe if it's not that, then it's that they really do believe we live in a police state and they're performing a public duty. But I would question some of their methods. I mean, in the case of that Coventry auditor, he was just being obnoxious. He was actually just started following the officers around. Give me your ID, give me your ID. I mean, frankly, British police are incredibly restrained compared to other parts of the world. In Russia, batons would be out. In the States, for sure. I haven't even mentioned the likes of China. So I think sometimes our police are, I don't want to say pushover, but I don't know. I just don't think it's the best thing, this sort of approach. If they happen to come across this video, they'll probably call me a puppet, they'll call me a stooge of the state, they'll call me all these things. Let them. Let them. I've always condemned police brutality, I've always condemned police corruption, and I believe in accountability. I also think there's a place for investigative journalism. I mean, I hate abuse of power, and I think there are some thugs in uniform. But harassing regular police officers just doing their job, I don't think it's clever, and I don't think it particularly serves any purpose. Your thoughts?